God, we can't make tiny little jokes about robbing people anymore. I could tell you my secrets, but then I'd have to kiss you on the forehead. Not trying to get banned from YouTube just yet. This is probably one of my most asked questions, but it's where do I shop and how do I find cute plus size clothes? By the way, yes, I am in the process of moving, so just pretend these boxes do not exist. And obviously I'm very well aware of how hard it is to find plus size clothing in general, yet alone cute plus size clothing, like clothing that you actually want to wear that also fits you. I've dealt with it personally. I've seen it with my mom. I've seen it with my fellow plus size friends. It's not fun and it really sucks. The lack of size inclusivity is so bad at this point that the number one advice I see from people is just to make your own clothes. Like, it's that easy. You still have to get a sewing machine, obtain patterns, learn how to actually sew, have the time to make your own clothes, buy the fabrics to make your own clothes. Like, it's not that easy, even though I would like to learn how to make my own clothes. That's just not a realistic option for everyone, which is why I'm here today to reveal all my secrets and tell you all how I find my clothes. If you do not like secondhand clothes, this will not be the video for you. First up, we got thrift stores. If you're someone who's watched my videos at all, it is no secret that I do mostly like to shop secondhand. Personally, it's more affordable. I find more options at thrift stores sometimes than I do on the entire internet, which is a very sad sentence. Sustainability has kind of become a buzzword, but there's also the sustainability aspect of just buying clothes that are secondhand, that are already made, and not buying newly produced clothes, but instead just trying to wear clothes that already exist in the world, because there's so many, and trying to prevent it from ending up in a landfill somewhere. I'm so sorry if you hear my window unit or see my plant moving, but I had to turn it back on. I was already sweating and I just could not sit here like this for the next 30 minutes. Like, I was losing my train of thought and could not get a proper sentence out. I've been thrifting since I was a kid. I very vividly remember going to my local Goodwill with my mom, and we just kind of kept thrifting together. And it's fun at that age, especially, to see different kinds of clothes and kind of experiment with your style and having clothes that are just in your size, that are accessible. Because I remember as a kid, like, the only clothes that I really had access to were Forever 21's plus size section, which wasn't very good, and Avenue, which was a plus size store for older women, which is fine, but that's not ideal when you are like 10 years old and want cute clothes that fit you. And I feel like people think that there's this special secret to finding the best clothing items, but the truth is it's just a lot of trial and error. Going to different thrift stores, learning the ones that you prefer and you typically find the best items at. So like just going around to different thrift stores in your local area, or if you have a car, maybe like 35 minutes outside of your area, and seeing what they have. Like, my preferred thrift store in New Jersey is a 30-minute drive away from my apartment, and that's why I don't go there very often. But every time I do go there, I do usually end up finding things that I genuinely like. And I know a lot of people say that when you go to thrift stores, you should have a Pinterest board or specific items that you're looking for. And I'm not saying to not do that, but I am saying that every time I've personally done that, I never usually end up finding what I'm looking for. Like, you kind of just have to let the thrift gods do as they may. And if you're able to, I definitely recommend going on a weekday versus a weekend, because thrift stores will be very packed during the weekend. I know not everybody can go to a thrift store on a weekday, but if you can, that's definitely preferable. I think you would have a much better time in general because there's less people there, but also you'd be more likely to find things you actually like. This is so obvious, but try on your clothes. You want to make sure that the items you find aren't just cute on the hanger, that they fit you properly, they aren't uncomfortable, because there's plenty of times I've found something that looks cute on the rack, but it just doesn't sit right on my body, or it squeezes my arms too much, or it's too short, or I just am not a fan of the fit, and that would have been money wasted and time wasted and somebody else could have taken it home that it fits better. And if you're someone who doesn't like trying on clothes at the thrift store or before washing them, if you feel comfortable doing so, I definitely recommend taking your measurements of your chest, your waist, your hips, and your inseam. So that way, if you're at a thrift store and you find an item you like, but you don't want to try it on and you're not sure if it'll fit, you can just measure the garment and you can see if it'll fit you that way. It's not always a perfect system, but it is way more helpful and accurate than just looking at a garment and trying to guess whether or not it'll fit you. Also, if you find a piece of clothing that you like, but it's not in your size or it's too expensive, I do like to take a photo of the tag on the garment, so that way when I get home, I can type in the brand into Poshmark or eBay or just Google, honestly, so I can see, does this brand have my size? And if they do have my size, do they have similar garments? Are there listings on one of these websites that are cheaper than what the thrift store has? And even if you find a garment that you do really like and it does fit you at the thrift store, you can still look up the brand online and see if they have other clothing options that you like. I do think, unfortunately, this is common amongst plus size people, but I think we fall into this trap where we find something at the thrift store that's our size, so we just buy it even though we don't necessarily like it, just because we're so used to never finding anything in our size that we think, oh, I have to own this item just because it fits me. And that's not me trying to comfort anyone, because if anything, I am coming for myself, because I still fall into that trap sometimes. You kind of just have to make a conscious effort to look at a garment before you purchase it and say, do I actually like this? If there were other garments that were in my size, would I still pick this? Like, would I actually wear it? Do I actually want it in my closet? And a lot of times, the answer is no. Kind of similar to thrift stores in the sense that it's secondhand clothing, but also different because vintage clothing is usually way more expensive. If you're somebody that can afford to spend a little bit more money on your clothes, or you want to invest in your wardrobe, vintage clothing can be a great option for you. Unfortunately, I do think I always love the idea of plus size vintage clothing more than the reality, just because a lot of vintage plus size clothing is not my style, in the sense that it was made with the idea that plus size people need to cover up and like wear things that are very loose and flowy. And yes, I know that's very hypocritical of me to say when I am literally wearing like a baby doll nightgown dress today, but whatever. This is a conscious choice rather than just wearing something because it's my only option and I'm being forced to cover up. And that's not to say that vintage plus size clothing that doesn't look like a muumuu doesn't exist, or that if that's your style and you like wearing that, that's somehow wrong. I'm just saying that vintage plus size clothing will be very hit or miss for a lot of people, because it's the sign of the times, baby. Also, I do just want to clarify that the advice I'm giving will be mostly directed at people who live in the United States, just because I live in the United States and I'm from here and I have only ever lived here, so I'm not really qualified to give advice on anything else. But if you live in a bigger city, there are sometimes plus size vintage stores, or at least vintage stores that make an effort to carry plus size clothing, like Plus Brooklyn or Shop Berries in Brooklyn, New York, or Lost Girls Vintage in Chicago. Kind of related to vintage stores, but pretty loosely, are also flea markets. You can try flea markets in your area in general and just kind of see what they have and if they have anything in your size that you like. Flea markets can also be great for jewelries or bags or accessories. If you live in LA, there's flea market events like Thick Thrift, or I know that I've been to one in Chicago called Thick Mall. I've never been to Thick Thrift in LA, but I really want to go. I follow them on Instagram, and every time I experience major FOMO. And if you can find content creators that have a similar body type to you, that live in the city you live in, which I know really only is super helpful if you live in a major metropolitan city, you can follow their Instagram or TikTok and just kind of look at the stores they tag. Like, personally, I love Kimberly or Kimberly on Instagram. I don't even live in LA, but I am so jealous of her wardrobe, and I would just love to rob her house. Honestly, it's a joke, okay? God, we can't make tiny little jokes about robbing people anymore. But yeah, Kimberly's outfits are great. I definitely recommend following her if you want some outfit inspiration. They're just wonderful, and I would love to shop at all the places she shops at. And if you have a car or access to someone who does have a car, then I love going yard sailing, or you can go to estate sales also in the suburbs or a nicer area of where you live. I'm not saying estate sales are always cheap, but usually yard sales are on the cheaper side, and I love perusing I'm a yard sale peruser. I don't typically find a lot of clothes at yard sales unless they specifically have a lot of plus size clothes, but even then, sometimes they're not really my taste. I always have this fantasy that I will go to a yard sale and there will be some grandma who has this wonderful plus size vintage, and we will bond and we'll laugh and we'll live and we'll love. But a lot of the time it's usually just like athleisure wear, or like very old winter coats, just stuff that's not necessarily my style, which is fine because, you know, I don't want to yuck other people's yum, but just for me personally, it can be a bit of a bust. But I will always try nevertheless, and even if I don't find clothes, I do really love yard sales and estate sales for stuff like jewelry, bags, accessories, stuff that's fashion related and clothing adjacent, but it's more likely that I'll find something that actually fits on my body. I would say out of all of these, the thing that I've spent most of my shopping time doing this past year is shopping online, but secondhand. So a lot of scrolling on Depop, eBay, Poshmark, Facebook Marketplace, definitely. There's also Gem and ThredUp. There's a lot of different resale apps now. There's also Mercari, OfferUp. I don't go on those as much, but there's just so many options in this year we live in. And not very surprisingly, not a lot of options when it comes to plus size clothing. I think my biggest piece of advice if you are going on the secondhand website or app route is to know specifically what you want and use very specific terms. For example, I bought this dress secondhand on eBay. So if I was looking for a dress like this, I wouldn't just type in dress and then filter by my size, because there will be tens of thousands of options. And you don't have to be super specific all the time. Like, I think when I found this, I typed in either vintage baby doll dress or vintage nightgown. And then I like to filter by condition, so I'll always click pre-owned. There can be a lot of drop shippers on eBay, so I always make sure to filter the condition by pre-owned. And then of course I filter by my size and sometimes the item location, so I'll just put US only because I don't want to have to deal with paying for shipping from other countries. And I also click buy it now because personally I just don't really love getting into bidding wars. I don't like to use my time that way. This is going to sound like an ad, and I promise it's not, because I've been wanting to work with eBay and they just haven't taken the hint yet. But you can filter by things like color, material, where the item is located, etc. You can get really detailed on eBay, so it's easy to narrow down what you're looking for if you want something very specific. I've been wanting to buy myself a nice handbag recently, so like you can filter by external material and internal material and just a lot of different things, which is something I really appreciate. There's a cabinet above our closets, and Loaf was able to jump up there by herself from the box. So if I'm looking up here, it's because she's like a god in the sky right now, basically. I think a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to Depop because of the whole Depop girlies trope, and there's been a lot of controversies around reselling on Depop and the prices that resellers put on their clothes, and also just people kind of selling ridiculous DIY homemade items that aren't good, just not good. And that's definitely all valid. I am not here to say that none of that is true, because it definitely is, but I do think that there are also good sellers on Depop and there are good finds that aren't super expensive, because I think when people think of Depop, they think of overpriced, very expensive clothing. And does that exist on the app? Of course. I think that exists on every reselling app, but there are a lot of items that are actually affordable, and I think to kind of combat that image, Depop now even has a like feature on their homepage where you can find items that are $20 or less based on the items you like or save. Lately, I've also been liking ThredUp. I used to find that their search feature was kind of wonky. Like if I typed in something specific, like polka dot halter top, it would just show me completely unrelated items. And also they kind of made it hard to feature by size, like the size filter didn't work correctly. But the past few times I've been on their site, I have noticed that they have a plus size section now, which they didn't used to have. So that could also be an option if you feel like perusing. Sorry if I'm being a little annoying today. I do think I'm a bit, just like a wee bit hopped up on caffeine. I honestly don't shop a lot firsthand, but I do have a lot of pieces that I love from smaller businesses like Tunnel Vision, and my most recent favorite top is from Redancy. Surprisingly, ever since I was a teenager, I have also liked Old Navy. Not everything they have is created equal. Like sometimes it can feel very cheap, or the fit of their items don't necessarily fit right, but they do have plus sizes. I don't believe they carry a ton of plus sizes in store anymore, so it would have to be online, unfortunately, because a lot of brands have now decided that fat people don't need to try on clothes in store. But something I do like about Old Navy is that they do use quite a bit of natural fibers. Like you can find more items that are 100% cotton or 100% linen. I should have done this before filming, but I'm gonna make a little list of brands I like that you can shop firsthand at, and put it on the screen just so there's like something comprehensive that you all can look at and I don't want to say study, but for lack of a better word, study. That's your homework for tonight. Find one plus size clothing item that you actually like. I think that's mostly it, and I feel bad because I think a lot of people assume that I have all these great, very in-depth, detailed secrets, and I really don't. A lot of how I find cute clothing is just time, like taking the time to check the thrift store regularly if I feel like it, or just scrolling a lot, like oh my god, she scared me so bad, baby girl. She is so brave. Oh my god, and agile. My 9-year-old baby girl, you are so talented. That was quite the entrance that my co-host made. She scared the absolute shit out of me, but I love her so much. I kind of forgot what I was talking about, but I think it was something along the lines of people thinking that I have all of these amazing secrets, but a lot of it is just taking the time to scroll. A lot of scrolling, like when you're just watching some mindless TV show, is my personal favorite, or like YouTube videos. You could have even been scrolling while you watch this one. Wasted opportunity. And a lot of people still ask me questions about finding my style or finding the confidence to wear what I want, and I do have a YouTube video. Oh my god, she did it again. I keep getting interrupted when I'm trying to give you all some valuable information, but she's my baby girl, so it's okay. I do still get a lot of questions of people asking me how I found the confidence to wear what I want, or how I found my style, and I do just want to remind you all that I have a YouTube video up about this already. It is like 40 minutes long. What can I say? I am a yapper, and I swear my style is usually better than what I'm wearing today, but I am in the process of moving. Like, we are literally moving next Monday, so less than a week from now, so I can't be bothered to try that hard. My apologies, but not really. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope some of this information was actually helpful to you all, and me and my co-host will see you all in my next video. Bye!